Dear Indian friends, greetings from Bell'Italia 88 and welcome back. I am Caterina Brazzi-Castracane, I am an historian and in collaboration with the Italian Cultural Center in New Delhi, I am here to share with you this second appointment dedicated during this month to the rediscovery of the Italian city of Florence. Today we are going to talk about the Secrets Gardens, and we will share a tour through the most remarkable gardens from the time of the Medici to the modern time, discovering that these gardens are one of the most remarkable part of the cultural heritage of this city. First of all, we have to say that the idea that identifies gardens as the place of spirit was born during the first part of the 15th century, and in particular in Florence, that was the moment when the gardens became the veritable special place used for different kind of activities, including the philosophical speculation. With the Medici dynasty, gardens more acquired the feature of a place of leisure and were used to celebrate the myth of this Grand Ducal power. In particular, the Medici dynasty quickly understood that to become the perfect icon of a modern kind of aristocracy, they should have different kind of palace inside the capital of their power, Florence, but also in the countryside area that surround the small town. This is one of the reasons why they spent a lot of money just building or buying different kind of villas that were completely transformed by the hand of the most remarkable artist of that time. And it's important to notice that also the gardens were thought to be illustrious part of this new kind of house. Actually, it's important to notice also that there is a sort of a theoretical foundation in this new way of life that is related with the idea so popular during the age of humanism to rediscover the classical world, frescoes or decoration like this one that you are seeing from the ancient time were reused to create something modern, something that could be represented by the new creation of gardens, thought to be the perfect outdoor living room, a place where the crowd could spend sometimes enjoying different kind of activities. On the other way of the theoretical foundation, we can also find a pragmatical starting point of this new cultural revolution. And we can find it in the publishing by the architect Leon Battista Alberti of an important treatise named the Re Edificatoria. In this masterpiece of the architectural literature, Alberti told us that the main important aspect to transform the palace into something modern is to translate the Latin concept of otium, that you can just translate and interpret as the perfect definition of a quiet life in countryside. As you are going to understand, buying villas and transformed them quickly became a social purpose. And this is one of the reasons why castle and fortress edificated during the medieval age, during this period, lived the step to peaceful palace and country villas more suitable to the modernity. In the case of the Medici, they realized a complex system of suburban villas, and among them 14 are part of the UNESCO Heritage. But it's important to notice that not just the palace are part of this heritage, but also the gardens are part of it, because they embody the real ideal of princely residence in the country, where it was possible to live in harmony with nature, art and knowledge. Among them, I choose to share with you some example of these wonderful places that are still today in perfect condition in the area of Tuscany. First of all, the Medici Villa of Cafagiolo. In this case, we are talking about an important villa remarkable for its evolution over time from a defensive garrison to a country house. The perfect idea of a country house, a modern country house, just realized to enjoy holidays, relax, and also to take care of farming activities. In this case, the original building was a castle built during the period of the Florentine Republic, and it was completely transformed by the hand of the architect Michelozzo di Bartolomeo into the first form of fortified palace. The project was realized by the will of Cosimo the Elder, the pater patriae of the Medici dynasty, and he decided to realize an important palace with one tower designated to the control of the area, and also with walls with battlement. But according to Vasari, we know that Cosimo the Elder was also a man who devoted himself to the layout of an extensive green area around the house. And still today is possible to see, thanks to this picture, that this green part of the garden was one of the most important part of the project in general. And in particular, we have to remember that Cosimo the Elder was also the man who decided to realize the peculiarities of this garden, including in this case the ragnaia, that was a complex system of small fruits with nets to capture birds, that was, as we can read inside the masterpiece of the architecture of that time, it was one of the pilasters of every well-equipped villa of that time. But also in this case, the villa is remarkable because it was the backstage of an unlucky love affair that took place in this palace during the year 1575. The protagonist of this murderer of the modern age were Leonora di Toledo, her husband Pietro de' Medici, and a young noble man whose name was Bernardino Antinori. The lady and this young nobleman had a love affair who was discovered by her brother-in-law, the Grand Duke Francesco III, who decided, after had discovered it, to banish him to the Elba Island. From there, the man continued to write her love letters until the moment when the Grand Duke discovered also that letters. And so he decided to condemn him to die to preserve the family's honor. But the most tragical aspect of this plot was just to come, because the husband, Pietro de' Medici, decided after this event to call his wife to the villa of Cafagiolo, and there he murdered her with his sword. Eventually, at the end of the history, it was reported that she had died of a heart attack, and with all the hypocrisy, but also with the honors designated to a member of the important Medici family, she was buried with full pomp inside the private chapel of the family at the Basilica of San Lorenzo. The Basilica is this huge church that you are seeing in this picture, and at that time the Cappelle Medici were used as the pantheon for the members of this family. The second important villa that I want to share with you is the Villa of Careggi. That was the place where Lorenzo the Magnificent died in 1492. In this case, this is the third villa realized by the hand of the architect Michelozzo, and is the perfect example of a rural villa farm realized during that time. In this case, the villa represents the second form of palace realized by the volunteer of the Medici family that had an important innovation that is represented by this open loggia that was able to link together the garden and the palace with also the important interior decoration realized during the same period. In this case, also the garden of the Villa of Careggi was divided in two different parts, one destined to the flowers and also to the fruit trees, and the other one designated just to the evergreen plants, and so wild to be called Giardino Selvatico. In this case, is important to notice also the frescoes that were realized at the beginning of the 17th century and are still today one of the most remarkable aspects of this villa. In particular, in this case, you can see the cut-off arm of the Medici family that is still present in the center of the ceiling, and that was one of the elements of the decoration that you can find in different parts of the palace. The place was important during that period also because was one of the stations designated to the reunion of the most remarkable cultural circle of that time. time, the Neoplatonic Academy. That was just a circle where philosophers, writers, and artists used to reunion to discuss about the important aspect of life. In particular, during that time, people as Pico della Mirandola or Poliziano or Niccolò Cusano or also Leon Battista Alberti and Lawrence the Magnificent were the most remarkable protagonists of that season that was really the first part of the revolution destined to be called modernity. Inside the villa there was, and there still today, an important park that was completely transformed according to the Romantic style when the villa was built by an important English man, Francis Joseph Sloane, who was the scholar, one of the scholars of the natural science. He destinated the most important part of the park to the cultivation of exotic trees, and still today that the villa is the headquarters of the hospital of Careggi. Inside the park you can notice the important trees of sequoia from the California, the important and huge cedar from Lebanon, and also different kind of exotic plants including palms and strawberry tree from Greece. The third villa that I want to show you is the Medici Villa in Fiesole, and in this case it was not realized by the hand of Michelozzo, but as the latest studies assert, it was realized by Leon Battista Alberti and other important architects after him. In particular, Alberti was able to create the archetypical Renaissance villa, thought to be the perfect representation of a simple villa completely posed inside the perfect landscape. And in this case also the garden was thought as originating from a triangle overlying himself. The result of this work was the perfect harmony, and as you can see, the building no longer has a medieval style decoration, but was realized to be the first example of a simplicity of the structure that was able to accord economy, necessity, and also beauty. This place was well known because was the scene of the first part of the conspiracy that is the name from the family who decided to organize it, the Pazzi family, the conspiracy that was destined to kill Giuliano de' Medici. Actually, the conspiracy was concentrated to the aim to kill both Giuliano and Lorenzo, the most remarkable brother of this family, family in the Florence of that time, but the tragical murder was designated just to remember the death of Giuliano de' Medici. In particular, this Bloody Sunday of the Florentine history is remembered was the morning of the 26th of April 1478, when during the Mass for the Easter celebration with all the important citizens of Florence presented inside the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, Giuliano was killed by two men, Bernardo Bandini Baroncelli and also Francesco De Pazzi, while his brother Lorenzo was able to take refuge into the sacristy and in this way to escape the death. Obviously, the revenge of this tragical project was yet to come, and in particular two men of the family Pazzi, Francesco and Jacopo, were hanged, and in particular Jacopo, as you can see in this painting by Odoardo Borrani, still housed inside the painting gallery in Palazzo Pitti, was hanged, and his body was several times insulted until the moment when he was buried out of the city, as happened for people condemned to death. Is important also to remember the Medici Villa of Poggio Caiano. That was realized, in this case, by the volunteer of Lawrence the Magnificent, who called to realize it one of the most important architects of that time, Giuliano da Sangallo, that is noticed and also well known to have realized during his life also different kind of palace for the popes. In this case, the construction started at the end of the 15th century and was continued by the one of the sons of Lorenzo the Magnificent, Giovanni. Giovanni is well known as Pope Leo X. In this case, is portrayed by the hand of the master Raphael, and he decided to transform this important villa in one of the icon of the power of its family. In particular, he realized the facade and the portico with the cartoon arm of the family, and also some different example of the great details that were important to celebrate that family in this moment. But in this case, it's important also to notice the frescoes that were realized inside the room that takes the name from the figures of Leon X. In this case, the frescoes were realized in the first part of the 16th century by the most important artists of that time, including Pontormo and Alessandro Allori, and the cycle that is still today almost intact was dedicated to celebrate the huge power of the Medici dynasty. During the next century, the villa was property of different other owner, including the one of the sister of the Emperor Napoleon III, Elisa Baciocchi Bonaparte. In this case, it is important also to notice that the garden was transformed according to the taste of the next century, and was also created inside the park an important lemon house designated to house the collection of citrus fluids so important for the Medici family. In this case, you can see this wonderful nature that is just a perfect album designated to show us the different kind of citrus fruit, and is also important that they were used as a symbol that the Medici choose for their cotton arm, because the scientific name of the orange, Mela medica, is quite related with the sound of the surname Medici, and this is one of the reasons why they not only decide to use this symbol under their cotton arm, but also they are designated the most remarkable part of the garden to the cultivation of these fruits. But also in this case, this villa was the scene for an important mysterious death. In this case, we are talking about the Grand Duke Francesco I, who was already married with the Lady Giovanna d'Austria, but who had just one true love, Bianca Cappello. After the death of his first wife, that died at the age of 32, he was able to marry Bianca Cappello, and the couple lived happy and in a peaceful life for several years, until the October 1687, when they decided to spend some time inside the villa of Poggio a Caiano, and when they found the death a few hours apart. In this case, there is also a probable murder instigator that was the brother of Francesco, Ferdinando, who was already a cardinal of the Catholic Church, but who was also interested into the rule of Grand Duke of Tuscany. But he's also interested to notice that today this is even a cold case, because a lot of different kind of studies were devoted to find a solution of this mysterious death, and a lot of paleopathologists during the last years spent a lot of time just to demonstrate that the couple was poisoned by arsenic, and so this is one of the first remarkable murder of any time. Who we will know if during the next years we will able to discover something new about this death that is considered one of the most remarkable and tragical page of the history of the family. But we have to talk also about the huge and wonderful place of the Boboli Garden that was realized to be the perfect outdoor museum with the idea to create the first example of Italian garden that became a model for many European courts. In this case, the family decided to create an important villa and its private garden that was thought to be something special. Another part of the palace realized to create astonishment to the visitors. The original project that was realized by the will of Cosimo III was designed by Niccolò Pericoli, known as Tribolo, and he realized the project of a garden that surrounded the huge Pitti Palace, just chosen by the Medici family as the Grand Ducal residence. The name of Boboli is probably a corruption of the original name of Bogoli or Borgoli, probably the name of the family name of the first owner of this land. But we have to say that this project was able to be the most important project for the Florence of the modern age. And in fact, the garden was transformed into the perfect place for three dynasties, starting from the Medici, continuing with the Lorraine until the time of the Savoy. A garden full of different kind of suggestion, example of fountains and green part, and also the great theater for the Baroque ceremonies that took place inside this part of the city. In particular, the first nucleus of the project was to realize a geometrical secret place, completely full of different kind of suggestion, including path leading to ponds, fountain, mazes, nymphea, temples and caves that were created to transform the garden in a sort of fantastic place. In particular, we have to notice that there still are three different parts that are represented of the taste of the time. First of all, the amphitheater that was designed by the Tribolo for Eleonora di Toledo and realized to be the perfect amphitheater destined just to the plants. Original, the name of this part of the garden was Anfiteatro di Verzura. Verzura just is a corruption in the first kind of Italian of verdura, vegetables, plants, nature. And this amphitheater was using during the next century for different kind of ceremonies, including the celebration of the carnival. At the end of the 18th century, the huge Egyptian obelisk was erected in the middle part of the amphitheater, and still today it has the perfect design by Niccolò Gaspero Paoletti. city. This is one of the first symbol of that exotic fashion and taste so popular at the starting point of the 19th century. But also it's important to remember the presence of the Buontalenti Grotto, one magical place inside the Boboli Gardens that originally was just a reservoir for the water. This facade was realized by the hand of Giorgio Vasari, who realized this perfect archetypical temple that wanted to be a new kind of interpretation of the classical architecture. And in those two nice were posed the important statues by Baccio Bandinelli of Hercules on the left side and Ceres on the right side. But for the volunty of the Duke Francesco III, the reservoir was transformed into a grotto by the hand of Bernardo Buontalenti, one important architect of that period, who was able to create three different rooms related into an unique ambient, completely decorated with themes related with the natural way of life. In this case, you can see these frescoes with details, as you can see, of monkey and birds, completely representative of the new taste of the Arcadia, but also the present of these important sculptors that are the presence that could dialogue with the other suggestion presented inside these three rooms. It's important also to notice the huge coffee house realized, in this case, by the volunteer of the Lorraine. And it was realized at the end of the 18th century with this peculiar onion-shaped dome top, and was used as the small house inside the fortress. It's important also because in this coffee house that is important and was used for the next century as a resting point inside the park, the court used to drink teas, coffees, but also hot chocolate. That was, for that time, the most remarkable taste just arrived from Paris. In this case, the Garden of Boboli is still alive, also has a botanical garden where plants and flowers are among the protagonists of the garden. And you can see in different season, different kind of flowers that are blowing for to be the perfect icon of the power of nature. But today Florence is also important for the presence of several others, public or private garden. And in this case, I choose to hand this appointment talking with you about one secret and romantic garden realized by the hand of Giuseppe Poggi in the year 1865. And important here because this was the year when Florence was becoming the capital of Italy, and this garden was realized for the same reason. In this case, it was realized with different kind of cultivation, in particular this part that is dedicated to the Japanese style of gardening, but also with different kind of roses that are maybe the most remarkable symbol of the true love. But I suggest to visit this garden to you also for another reason, because the French artist Jean-Michel Folon decided to give to the city of Florence several examples of his sculpture realized on the same idea of the surrealist Magritte, to celebrate the park and also the perfect icon of Florence. In this case, the masterpiece from which we are going to concluding this conference is called Partir, and is just a bronze suitcase that is a perfect frame around the icon of the skyline of Florence, about which we were talking about in our first appointment. That is just the perfect interpretation of a city that is still alive, embody both several kind of life. First of all, the life realized and built during the time of the Renaissance, but also the life of a city that is still today an important workshop to create something able to put together the suggestion of the past with the aim and the things that are represented to the future. I stop with this imagine sharing my screen with you, just to say goodbye and see you during the next appointment in that are ready for the next month. Thank you very much to everybody, and see you the next time. Bye bye.